So Adult Swim's long-delayed adaptation of horror icon Junji Ito's probably magnum opus, Uzumaki, the horror manga, has finally finished its 4-part episode run, and fans are a bit divided. And by a bit divided, I mean some are absolutely pissed. What up, my beautiful weebs? I am Finn. Welcome back to finnfilms. Join me today as we are talking about what went wrong with the anime adaptation of Uzumaki. What is my favorite work of the Japanese manga horror icon Junji Ito, the king of spooks and scares and everything that is weird, freaky body horror. And let me tell you, man, people are very split on the anime adaptation of Uzumaki. So for a little background information, Junji Ito is considered by many to be the kind of GOAT, the greatest of all time of the Japanese horror manga kind of genre. Ito has produced a plethora of works and is known for a very kind of distinct style, covering a very kind of distinct themes, namely body horror and kind of this focus on this weird kind of eldritch, almost like Lovecraftian type like horror themes in his works. Even if you're not a fan of Ito, if you've been on the internet long enough, you've probably seen one of his panels floating around the internet, possibly this one or maybe even this one. The man has a very distinct style that really jumps off of the page onto you and has filled my dreams with all sorts of grotesque, absolutely horrifying nightmares, as his manga really are some of my favorite works of like horror media out there ever made. Now, there have been numerous attempts to adapt many of Ito's works, whether into live action films or series or to anime works, and most, if not all of them, have fallen short to reach the heights to be able to adapt the same kind of horror feelings that erupt from Ito's page. Now, to me, a lot of this is expected. Ito's drawing style is extremely distinct. The way he uses black and white, the way he does shading, the way he's able to bring these horror feelings, these feelings of uneasiness, of uncanny valley onto the page is something that is extremely hard to adapt, to bring into whether it is an animated format or a live action format. A few years back, Netflix released the Junji Ito Horror Collection, which is basically a series of Ito's short stories that were all adapted each into their own animated episode and then put together into a kind of horror anthology season, if you will. And let me tell you, the fan base was not happy with this one either, for what I think are very valid reasons, namely the fact of the animation style used on the Junji Ito collection, which really did not grasp the same kind of like horror feelings and vibes that comes from Ito's works. While a lot of the story adaptation from this collection of the short story in the manga to the anime was relatively spot on, people's seemingly biggest concerns, biggest problems with the Junji Ito horror collection was with the way it was animated. The anime art style that was chosen for this anime adaptation, which definitely did not match with the horror tones and vibe and feel that come from Ito's very distinct art style. Now, I just want to say this right now. In general, I am a lot less harsh than a lot of the other hardcore Ito fans when it comes to, grading and reviewing many of the Ito adaptations. While yes, I thought that the Junji Ito horror collection did have problems, as an Ito fan, I still did enjoy it for what it is, even if it didn't live up to the lofty heights that were, set out for it that many people expected when they think of trying to adapt, Ito's work on the page into an animated series. In my opinion, this is just a lot harder than I think anime studios realize when they go to adapt Ito's work. Being a piece of horror media, let alone a piece of drawn horror media in a very distinct art style that Ito makes, it is no easy task to take something like this and then adapt it into an animated series, as opposed to other types of manga that is adapted into anime. For example, take any number of any popular shonen nowadays, whether it's a sports anime like Blue Lock or something like Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, what have you. In general, if you have the budget, it is much easier to adapt these types of shonen kind of anime, shonen kind of manga works into the animated format. Ito's works, on the other hand, because of their very distinct art style and the fact that it is horror, you have to, at the end of the day, invoke these horror themes, make the work scary. It is much harder to adapt this successfully, in my opinion. This brings us to the highly anticipated release of the Junji Ito Ito Uzumaki adaptation. Uzumaki being, in my opinion, my favorite work that Ito has made out of his many different manga short stories and manga books. And now, when I tell you that there was a lot of hype that had been built around this Uzumaki adaptation, that's a bit of an understatement. The hype was absolutely palpable. This anime had been delayed for about 5 years. It was 5 years in the making, and as such, many of the fan base had grown, well, pretty hyped. And then when they were seeing trailers and teaser material that looked like this, I think for pretty good reason. When you look at the trailer and many of the teaser reels and stills that were released before Uzumaki had debuted on Adult Swim a couple of weeks back, it was understandable why the fan base had grown themselves, had kind of rallied themselves into this massive hype train. This was finally going to be the time that a piece of Junji Ito's work was done to justice. This was finally going to be the time that an adaptation of Junji Ito's work finally lived up to the lofty heights of his mini manga series. And when you looked at the promotional material, I completely understood why this hype train had gone full steam. However, with hindsight, there is something striking that you notice about much of this material that had been released pre the debut of Uzumaki, and that is that all of the material, from the trailer to all of the teaser clips and things, were all from the first episode. Now, this is important because episode 1 of Uzumaki in a vacuum is arguably, in my opinion, an absolute masterpiece. From the adaptation to the voice acting to the music to the way they adapted Ito's story, everything was perfect. This was what many people had come to expect, what many people had wanted for many years now when they think of adapting one of Ito's work into an animated series. Specifically, the quality of the animation, which was really freaking high. The animation for episode 1 was a combination of several different animation styles, from a classic hand-drawn animation to 3D and motion capture, combined with this kind of strange use of rotoscoping, which is basically taking live action footage and then drawing over it to animate it, which really all combined together for this absolutely amazing, dreadful feel. The way the characters move in episode 1 of Uzumaki is the slow, kind of deliberate pace. It really embodies this feeling of dread and horror that you can come to expect from a Junji Ito piece of horror film. It's uncanny in the way that many characters move and act, from the wind effects to any time anything moved. You could tell that something was different and something was special about this episode. Much of this being the fact that, like I said, a lot of this episode was rotoscoped. A lot of the scenes that you see throughout episode 1 were live action scenes that were recorded and then drawn over to turn them into animated works. Yes, people actually acted out in live action many of the scenes of Uzumaki, and the way that all of these different animation styles combined together was an absolute bizarre horror piece of Junji Ito body horror masterpiece. And then there was episode 2. The drop-off in animation quality from episode 1 to episode 2 is, well, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. Here, to really illustrate this, here is a Twitter post that compares animations from episode 1 and episode 2 side by side, and I'll just show you so you can get a look for yourself. No. Wait. Yeah, something is not right here. How could we go from something that was so amazing like episode 1 to this? Now again, I want to make this clear. Overall, I really enjoyed the Uzumaki anime adaptation. While yes, there was a dramatic drop-off in animation quality, especially in episode 2, out of the 4 episodes, episode 2, in my opinion, is the most stark contrast, the probably worst pieces of animation. This is saved to some degree in episodes 3 and 4, especially when you consider the, relative, pretty accurate adaptation of the story, and you combine that with the, pretty good voice acting, and as well as the music, all of these other things combining together, in my opinion, saving what is the Uzumaki adaptation to some degree. But when you compare it to episode 1, all of these episodes together, you can tell that something went wrong here. Something happened to make this amazing drop-off in quality happen. We got suckered into thinking that this was going to be one of the best adaptations of a Junji Ito work to ever be made, that finally an adaptation of Junji Ito's work was going to live up to the lofty heights of his manga, only to be let down. So what happened? I think what makes the animation drop off in episode 2 even worse is that there's two big famous scenes that happen in episode 2. One being the introduction of the snail men in Uzumaki, these strange snail-like creatures, as we watch in horror multiple characters slowly get transformed into these snail humans, into the lighthouse scene at the end. Both of these two scenes are like pretty iconic in the Junji Ito fanbase, especially in Uzumaki as a manga horror book as a whole. So when you see this scene of the snail boy crawling up the side of the school, and then you compare it to the scene from the manga, it just doesn't hit right. This is one of the most iconic scenes in the Uzumaki manga, and I have to say that they really did let it down in episode 2, especially when you see the quality and the height that was brought in episode 1. So to see this really classic, iconic horror scene be reduced to this, in a scene that, while it is creepy at times, really doesn't live up to the kind of like really how horrific it's supposed to be from the manga, it is really sad to me. Like, there's something so hyper real about the Uzumaki manga on the page, the way that Junji Ito draws it, and they really captured this realism, in my opinion, in episode 1. So to see it drop off in episode 2, especially considering the horrifying, monstrous transition that is these snail boys, seeing these snail boys transfer from humans into their snail form, it just, while it is creepy, it doesn't capture it in the way that we were led to believe it was going to. So again, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly happened here? What happened to the Uzumaki anime? Well, in a now deleted social media post by Jason DeMarco, one of the producers for Uzumaki, we get a little bit of information that seems to be revealed. In the post, DeMarco says this: "It's fine. We knew this would happen. I can't talk about what went down, but we were screwed over, and the options were this. A, not finish and air nothing and just call it a loss. B, finish it and air episode 1 and leave it incomplete. Or C, run all 4, warts and all. Out of respect for the hard work, we chose C. After waiting so long, it makes sense why people would be mad. Unfortunately, I can't tell them who to blame it on, but someone is definitely at fault here, and we all just had to do our best when things imploded. Maybe others would have made different choices. We did the best we could with what we had. But again, a lot of people worked very hard on this show, and I don't think the actions of just 1 or 2 people should be the reason it never saw the light of day. Maybe that's the wrong choice, I truly don't know, but those people have a right to be annoyed and disappointed, but I'm glad that you're digging it." So over the last couple of weeks, some more information has slowly been seemingly revealed and leaked about what is happening with the Uzumaki manga. In this article from Gizmodo, they speculate and dive into a few of these details, but it very much seems like there was a dispute behind the scenes in the production of this anime, namely a shift seemingly between animation companies. Now, it's hard to know exactly what happened, but it very much seems that they spunked their entire budget in Uzumaki on episode 1, hence why the quality of the animation is so much better in episode 1. With little money left over, they were forced to switch anime production studios, hence the massive drop in quality that we see in episode 2, 3, and 4, with episode 2 being the main culprit. Now, I just want to say this, I agree with Jason DeMarco here. I think out of the 3 options that he was presented with, 1, completely scrap the project, 2, only air episode 1, or 3, finish it and air all 4 episodes, I think he chose the correct decision. Obviously, people are going to be upset. I mean, the Junji Ito fanbase is like many large fanbases, they are absolutely rabid. Let me tell you, the Junji Ito fanbase is freaking rabid, man. They hold no punches, as we've seen from the many attempts to adapt parts of Junji Ito's works. For me, though, as a fan, I am glad that the Uzumaki anime aired, even if there is a dramatic drop-off in quality from episodes 1 to 2, 3, and 4. Uzumaki is probably my favorite Junji Ito work, and so I was extremely excited to see that this was finally being adapted into an animated format, and episode 1 really got my hopes up. While I was disappointed when I watched episode 2, I still love this story and this manga in Junji Ito. While yes, there was some disappointment there, overall, my positivity just to have this work of my favorite manga being, my favorite horror manga being adapted into an anime series was more than enough for me to enjoy it. Yes, episode 1 was a masterpiece. Yes, there was a massive drop off in animated quality from episode 1 to 2, 3, and 4. But still, I have to say, overall, I think the adaptation was decently solid. I think if you step back, take your fan glasses off, and kind of look at it objectively, if you take all of the things into account aside from just the animation, if you look at the voice acting, you look at the quality of the animation that we were given, the music, the themes, the story adaptation, I think that it is a decent adaptation of the Junji Ito Uzumaki manga. I think really what made people even more upset was just how good episode 1 of Uzumaki was, and then the dramatic drop off in animation quality to 2, 3, and 4. I think if episode 1 wasn't as good as it was, if it wasn't a masterpiece, people would have lowered their expectations for Uzumaki. They still would have been disappointed as they were for the Junji Ito horror collection, but I think they wouldn't have nearly as big of a backlash. They wouldn't nearly be as upset as they were if it wasn't for the fact that episode 1 was a dramatic drop off from episode 2, 3, and 4. Months back, I made a video about My Hero Academia and why people will have been wrong about the My Hero Academia anime, and I think that there is a similar kind of phenomenon that happened with My Hero Academia that happened here. Objectively, My Hero Academia was amazing in seasons 1 and 2, and it had a dramatic drop-off in seasons 3 and 4, and a recovery in 5, 6, and the following seasons. However, because seasons 1 and 2 of My Hero were so damn good, the expectations for the rest of the seasons and episodes of this anime were so high that when they eventually dropped the ball in seasons 3 and 4, which weren't nearly as good, but weren't objectively bad, people felt like they were much worse than they really were. As such, many fans completely left My Hero Academia completely and didn't even bother watching, anything after like season 3, which I think is a shame because that show in particular has recovered in the later seasons, in my opinions 5 and 6. I think a similar kind of thing is happening here with Uzumaki. Again, the standards for episode 1 were so high, and we were sold a false bill of goods in all of the promotional material. We were led to believe that the entire 4-part special was going to be the same quality as episode 1. So when we saw the dramatic drop off in episode 2, a lot of people were so enraged, so mad that they didn't even give it a chance. The animations were all that they cared about, and they didn't even take into account all the other aspects of this show that actually were pretty decent. Think about it, it could have been so much worse. They could have completely butchered the story itself, or the music, or the voice acting. It could have been so more obscenely worse than it was. But in fact, I think if you look at it objectively, it really wasn't as bad as people are making it. Yes, the animation drop-off is real. Yes, episode 1 of Uzumaki is like an actual masterpiece. It is a true adaptation. It does manage to capture all of the things that make Junji Ito's writing great. All of these things that are so hard to translate from Junji Ito's drawings into an animated format. I think that episode 1 of Uzumaki managed to do it. Because of this though, when people saw the drop off in episodes 2, 3, and 4, they were naturally going to be disappointed. And again, I think that that is a valid feeling. I myself was disappointed, though I have to say that my love for Junji Ito's work probably overrode a lot of my disappointment. At the end of the day, I'm just happy to see one of my favorite works of horror manga being adapted into an animated format, even if it was a bit of a clusterfuck. And clusterfuck it was. At the end of the day, a lot of people worked very hard on this show, and it isn't the fault of many animators out there, many people who worked on this show, that it ended up turning out like this. At the end of the day, the blame for what happened with the Uzumaki anime, the spunking of all of the budget seemingly on episode 1, the force to change to different anime production studios that obviously weren't up to the task of adapting a work like Ito, this isn't their fault. This is the fault of people that were higher up in the project. People higher up than even people like Jason DeMarco, who was a producer on this show. So while yes, overall, when you take into account all 4 of the episodes together, it does feel like a bit of a letdown. It does feel like we were sold a false bill of goods, but in general, I think if you can step back, be objective, take away your, fandom bias for a second and just watch it and enjoy it for what it is, I think as a whole, as a package, episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, even with the problems in episode 2 and the problems in episode 3 and 4, which aren't nearly as bad as the problems in episode 2, I think that it is fine. I think that it is a fine adaptation, with episode 1 being the obvious unicorn, the obvious hallmark, which is a blueprint for any type of anime adaptation of Uzumaki that is going forward. At the end of the day, though, guys, these are just my thoughts and opinions, so feel free to let me know yours in the comment section down below. If you are angry by the Uzumaki anime, I think that your feelings are completely valid. As a mega fan, it made me upset as well, but overall, I think if you watch all 4 episodes together, which I do highly encourage you all to watch all 4 of the episodes, I don't think it's nearly as bad as people are making it out to be. Yes, there are problems. Yes, the animation quality drop-off is crazy real, but overall, in my opinion, I'm just glad that we got the Uzumaki anime. If my choice was between no Uzumaki anime, not getting to see the brilliance that was episode 1, or watching all 4, seeing the dramatic drop-off, I'll take that decision, watch the all 4 all day long. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, learned something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts about the Uzumaki anime in the comment section down below. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of my other anime content and just content in general on screen now. As always, thank you so much for watching and continue to support me. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, peace, love, Aru.